It is patch day in Marvel Snap. Huge changes. Cards got nerfed, archetypes dismantled, and some early offenders that we thought were going to get nerfed were left unchanged. We have all the patch notes, and we have some QA from one of the devs over on Twitter that should answer a lot of your questions about some of these buffs and nerfs and everything else that was changed in this latest update that just dropped today. And if you're ready for all of that, Valley Club, you know what to do. Find that like button and let's go snap it.
ValleyFlyin.
Hello. What is up, Valley Maniacs? I'm ValleyFlyin. Welcome back to the Valley Snap channel. We're talking all about this latest update in Marvel Snap with some balance changes, some cards, some other things. Now, we did see a roadmap that we talked about yesterday, and there's a lot of other things that are coming. A lot of these things that we talked about in yesterday's video in that roadmap should be coming next week, but there are some changes that happened today, some big nerfs and buffs. We're going to take a look at them as well as some question and answer from one of the devs. But before we do that, if you haven't already subscribed, hit that subscribe button for more great Marvel Snap content, at least 5 Marvel Snap videos per week when we're not on vacation, but we're back to the normally scheduled content on Marvel Snap, and that should help with all your gameplay experience. We have news, tips, tricks, everything to help you in Marvel Snap. But without further ado, let's go take a look at these patch notes here. March 21st, 2023. So the first thing is more tokens. Players who have not yet finished Series 3 will now earn 4 times more tokens than before. So similar to what Series 3 complete players are earning as far as collection tokens. So if you are outside of Series 3, have all the Series 3 cards, this is no change for you. But if you're still completing Series 3, then this is a nice change to give you more access to these collector tokens. The token shop now only contains Series 4 and 5 and ultimate variants. So those Series 3 patches changes are still there. Now, they did say in the roadmap that they're going to make a separate section for these ultimate variants, but as of right now, these ultimate variants are still in the token shops. When the next update goes live, it should have Series 4 and 5 in one part of the token shop and the ultimate variants all in another token shop. Some cards have dropped down to a lower series. Some series dropping is always good. So going from Series 5 to Series 4 is Zabu, a previous season pass card, Sauron, Shauna, Dazzler, and Shadow King, and going from Series 4 to Series 3, some of the worst cards in the game. M'Baku, there's Orca. Atuma is actually not that bad, and I guess M'Baku in certain decks can be playable. I don't know. I wouldn't go far to say he's okay, but he's playable. I guess his best when he's not playable. Anyway, M'Baku is moving down to Series 3. When you tap on a card for more details during a match, the big card now features artist credits and card mod. They did add that previously when you could look at your collection and see the artists and everything like that. But now you can do that with your opponent's cards or your own cards during the battle as well. New sounds for Thanos. There was a weird thing going on last update with Thanos, and now it looks like it has the correct thing, so it looks very good. If you have Thanos, make sure you check this out. Nimrod, haven't checked that out. Master Mode, I don't have that card yet. Negasonic Teenage Warhead, before she's even released, has some new card sounds and new location sounds for Morag and Bard Sinister. Almighty Thanos Vision effects have been added along with all of his Infinity Stones. So at the beginning of the match, all those go into the game, and the previous way it was before, it was one card going in at a time. That was a bug that got removed, and I do like the new visual change to Thanos right now. All right, these balance changes and updates. So what they're basically saying here is the Thanos and Shuri decks got so strong because it was not noticed during these the meta of Zabu and Surfer, and after these cards got nerfed, then it became more apparent that how strong Thanos and Shuri decks were. So now we're back. They're continuing to explore updates and improvements to the balance, and these are what they have so far. And the first card to get a balance update is Thanos with a slight nerf, going from a 6'11" to a 6'10", and he just got that buff to be a 6'10". Now they're reducing some of the power, so not all the way down, but still a little less than where he was. And what the devs said is that they increased Thanos' power in a previous patch that was built during a time when Zabu and Surfer were suppressing the success of Thanos-based decks. They're happy to keep him at 9 power for Shang-Chi's, but with his recent success, I thought it would be appropriate to pull back on this buff just a little bit. The change, it won't dramatically impact the success of Thanos decks, as most of his strength has in its stone iterations, like this stone here, which also got a slight change, and major change in the Lockjaw decks, but a slight change outside of that. On reveal, next turn, you could move one card to this location, and then you're going to draw a card. So previously, it was moving a card from this location to another location, and that made it so easy to abuse those Lockjaw decks. And what the dev said is this is among the strongest stones in Thanos due to his ability to create bonus Lockjaw triggers and disguise where cards might move. This reduces its efficacy with Lockjaw by removing incentive to play the Space Stone itself in a Lockjaw trigger, flattening the number of bonus opportunities for Lockjaw, restricting the strategic option for late game movement. We expect this to reduce the tactical flexibility of Thanos deck, makes them more fun to play against. So we will see if these balance changes for the Space Stone has this intended effect. Let's go and see what other cards got hit. And the next card in relation to this Thanos deck was Quinjet, also another strong card in this Thanos Lockjaw deck. So a few cards from this particular archetype got hit. And what the dev said is that cost reduction is powerful, and Quinjet was one of the few cards capable of reducing multiple cards. So the cards that didn't start in your deck, will cost one less. But now the big change here is now there's a minimum of one. So we would have all these stones at 0 power, and that made those Thanos decks very, very strong. They've enjoyed a few moments of the interaction, but like with the hood, but ultimately it creates both ongoing risk for future design space as well as fueling the dominant Thanos decks of today. So this is not just affecting the Thanos decks, but also affecting some of their design plans for the future. All right, next card that got hit is a big card, and this is that Shuri deck that is all over the place. Red Skull, going from a 5/15 ongoing to a 5/13 ongoing, and it's gonna, instead of having enemy cards are being increased by +2 power, enemy cards are only going by 1 power. So in itself, this is a slight buff to Red Skull, but in a Shuri deck, instead of having 15 power double to 30, now you're going to have 13 power double to 26. So a little bit of a nerf inside of a Shuri deck, a little bit of a buff outside of a Shuri deck. And what they said, the change is singularly aimed at reducing the strength of combining Red Skull and Shuri and Taskmaster. Outside of those interactions, the change is mostly a buff to the base card using Red Skull, giving you 9 or 10 power at the crowded locations rather than 7 or 9. So this is a good thing for Red Skull, bad thing for Red Skull in Shuri decks though. And She-Hulk also got a slight nerf. One of the best cards in the game, probably still one of the best cards in the game because of the interaction, costs 1 less for each energy spent last turn. And you can still really spam that, but instead of giving 10 power, you're going from 9 power. She-Hulk is a key component in the strongest Shuri decks, but sees widespread play in various decks thanks to his strength along Sunspot, Wave, Moon Girl. I mean, even a deck like with Magic and Infinite works very, very well as well. I think mostly that's cool, but she's more powerful than she needs to be for those combos. In addition, we want to encourage playing actively to those locations rather than holding cards for explosive turn 6. So we're continuing to weaken a few of the best cards for the latter. So we'll see what they do with it. It looks like this is just the start of impacting that huge big turn 6 plays. Let's move on to another card that got probably a little more of a nerf than she needed. I think what they could have done with this is make it a more reliable way that these cards are pulled, but instead what they've done, moving the last card played on this turn to this location. So if you're only playing one card, doesn't really matter. But if you're playing multiple cards, you're only moving the last card. So you can play all of your strong cards, then play one weak card. Aero's gonna move that. This is a huge nerf to her. Yeah, the devs say Aero's a tricky card for us. The actual balance for Aero has been healthy. She fulfills a vital role in game by providing an interaction, especially against dangerously polarizing cards like Galactus. It's important for Aero to be versatile and strong in order to be a widely playable tech card. We don't want her pushing out the majority of other 5-cost cards out of decks, but unfortunately that was the behavior that the devs were seeing. Aero can also be frustrating to deny players the option of playing their own end games. The change seeks to keep Aero strong where she's needed, foster more competition among 5-cost cards, and add more counterplay to have her more fun to play against. And I know a lot of times I just set up that one lane to move all the enemy cards to that one lane on that last turn with Aero. Not going to do that anymore. She did get a slight buff to her power, though, going from a 5.7 to a 5.8, but her overall value is a lot less. I'm wondering if this is a too harsh of a nerf. Let's talk about 3 other cards that got slight nerfs, and I guess this is a great nerf, a big nerf if you're running a lot of Shang-Chi's, but Absorbing Man, Mystique, and Taskmaster all got slight nerfs. These cards will all now require the previously card played to be in play in order to copy this attribute. So if the card is dead, if the card gets destroyed or anything, you won't be able to use these cards for their on-reveal abilities. So what it says for Mystique here, the last card you play has ongoing copy its text if it's in play. Same thing pretty much for Absorbing Man. On reveal, the last card you played has on reveal ability, copy its text if it's in play, and then same thing for Taskmaster. This severely weakens those Shuri decks, although as far as the flexibility, because sometimes I like to do that Arnim Zola. You won't be able to do that Arnim Zola or Taskmaster play. You probably have to do one of them and protect that Red Skull if you're doing that Shuri play, because now Taskmaster set this card's power to equal that of the last card you play, if that's in play. So if your Red Skull gets Shang-Chi'd, well, Taskmaster is not going to be able to copy that. You're putting down a 5-0 card if your Red Skull goes away. So this was something that is needed. I know it's very annoying when the cards die and you're still able to copy it. Just the flavor doesn't seem right with that. And then devs say this adjustment is a balanced part matchmaking expectations. A meaningful chunk of Taskmaster's strength in Shuri decks is the ability to copy a card's power, even if it's been destroyed by Shang-Chi or similar. An interaction that someone gets off report as a bug. However, this change weakens Shuri decks slightly and more cleanly matches players' intuition when they see these cards for the first time. So that if your card is not on the field, then that's something that you don't have to worry about. All right, Morbius power no longer updates in hand or on deck at that location. So previously, if you're playing a card that is discarded for Morbius, or every time you discard a card, even if it's in your hand, even if it's still in your deck, Morbius would still get that power, but no longer. We previously adjusted Morbius' power to update when he wasn't in play to simplify calculating his future power. However, this has proven a bit confusing in comparison to other cards, and also unnecessarily given Morbius, and unnecessary given how often Morbius is played in the very early in game and isn't very hard to calculate. We're reverting this change, but we expect to add future functionality to Morbius and all cards with ongoing buffs to their power that communicates their power in order to make these cards simpler to play with. And another ongoing card that got hit in this update is Null. So Null's power still updates in hand, but no longer updates in deck. So if you have Null in your hand, you are good. You don't have to play that. You're still getting all those combined power of all the cards that you have. If it's in your deck, though, you're not getting anything. And I guess that is a good thing as well. The dev notes say the future improvement discussed apply will also apply to Null, but we make them. And they say the future improvements discussed above will also apply to Null, but until we make them will also apply to Null, but until we make them, he will continue to function different relative to Devil Dinosaur and others. The reason for this is very important for Null players to be able to quickly identify, precisely calculate his power when making end decisions about their 6-cost card. As a placeholder adjustment, Null will no longer update his power when it's in your deck, so his functionality with Mr. Negative will be the same as his fellow ongoing cards. Notably, he's going to use his potential power for effects like the peak until we are able to make our decided improvements, a trade we're decided to accept for improving general use cases of Null. So Null is currently a Series 3 card. It probably should be dropping down to Series, Null is currently a Series 4 card. Should be dropping down to Series 3 the next time they do this. So we may want to see what happens with Null before you run out and purchase this. But if you just like Null and want to play with him, then that should be fine as well. All right, Widow's Bite also got a slight text change, and what that is while this in your hand, cards your deck cannot be drawn. While this in your hand, cards cannot be drawn. So Widow's Bite inaccurately described its in-game effect. While we considered updating the effect of Widow's Bite to only prevent drawing your own cards and effects like Cable from drawing your cards, ultimately, we decided it was a better experience to just simplify the text and keep the current effect rather than change these edge cases. So what's in your hand, you can't draw cards. We also got a few bug fixes as well. Nothing really stands out, but I know on on Steam, I'm crashing a lot more on my computer, which has actually cost me queues because it keeps saying it's trying to reconnect to the game. Hopefully that is fixed. We also have some known issues as well, but let's go take a look at what one of the devs on Twitter says. This is from Glenn Jones, and Glenn Jones is the principal game designer at Second Dinner. And what he says, the balance changes were a tough one with lots of variables. And I know the nature of patch notes means that they won't answer all of your questions and concerns. To that end, I'll answer select queries about the balance changes from today's reply to itself. And this is one of the questions I was asking. Since it's coming up a lot, there's only been one strong deck using Leech. And this is in regard to why Leech was not touched in this update. And nerfs to Thanos decks definitely weaken too. Our time to implement the behavior visual effects changes is also limited. We decided to take more time, find a change that we like that we can make, and then see if it was warranted. So Leech, your nerf is still coming, but it didn't come in this particular update. Also a popular question, why was Quinjet nerfed rather than making stones start in your deck, which means that they wouldn't apply to Quinjet. The stones simply don't start in the deck. We believe adding niche exceptions to otherwise intuitive scenarios is the wrong way to add complexity. So on its own, Quinjet is a meaningful future balance risk. So yeah, reducing cards to 0 is pretty overpowered if you have that in your hand. How much does Mr. Negative actually impact your nerf buff design cards? If it is as much as I expect, what does a game gain from its existence that justified keeping the game? Well, we kept it in the game because it's rad and exciting card to play and build around. And it's a very fun deck when everything goes right, but it is a deck that you're going to lose a lot. You know, hopefully you're losing 1 cube when you don't have that card in your hand. And then when you are winning, you're winning 8 cubes at a time. So hopefully it balances and gives you a good cube rate acquisition. I would say the impact is very small. I haven't weakened a design based on its own interaction with Snake Negative since I was hired 3 months ago and I've buffed several. All right, so the next question is curious. Design philosophy and data behind Red Skulls and not Shuri. Red Skulls is a much more niche card. Now that also hurts Shuri and also hurts Sauron and Zero. Love some insight on what went into that decision. Sauron and Zero, both strong performers, so the splash damage was intentional. Shuri does not have easily balanced knobs, which is what they could use to balance cards. So like their power, their cost. Well, Shuri, there's not a lot they could do with that part. So we're testing this approach, their deck, and taking more time on Shuri intentionally. So more changes possibly coming to Shuri down the road, and Leech possibly getting leeched as well. You seem to target the cards, the problem cards hurting other deck. Quinjet being the most obvious. Why not just make the stones part of the deck so you don't get in cost reduction to be disappointed by the Quinn nerf? I've seen this suggestion but oppose it. It complicates understanding of what Quinjet and similar cards affect. It's technologically weird and doesn't match intuition. I've avoided adding complexity in this ways, which I think is a good thing. Is there a reason you guys are hesitant to buff cards? A few nerfs for overperformance is nice. There's a few cards that need love. While this update will move the meta like 2 inches or so. What Glenn says is, I generally prefer to include some buffs with any nerfs, but the turbulent nature of Zabo and Thanos metagames have led me to reduce the variables and play to improve how we gather data. Also see new plans of debuting buffs in the future updates, so stay tuned. All right, next question. Why was 13 the number you chose for Red Skull? I'll try to assure you, it's actually a buff to the card, right? It's always in Shang's range now. To just curious the thought behind it. We strongly considered 12, but we decided to start with 13, and out of concern, 12 would be too hard of a hit from our internal players who knew Shuri best. Quinjet was good. Free resource is always problematic in my opinion, and weird expectation text just muddles the game now flow. Red Skull is kind of a buff, don't you think? It's how I intentionally nerfed a card in my mind, but I thought it would be overall small buff in Shuri. I think Red Skull on its own, now yes, but its interaction with Shuri Taskmasters are meaningfully weaker, we hope. Red Skull is a relatively healthy card, can be strong. If it's Shuri deck itself we want a weekend, then we miss it, we'll come at it again. So we have an Aero question here. In the next patch notes, you said you want to keep it still Galactus deck in check. Now Galactus can play a 0 card last to bypass it. She-Hulk combo decks can outperforming high power, which can no longer practically mitigate. Is this intended? This weekend's Aero versus Galactus, but finding a Wasp or Yellow Jacket isn't too trivial, nor is putting them in their deck. That's part of the reason why we get She-Hulk. We prefer Aero to be more like a big Polaris Juggernaut than a Diet Leader. and thus making room for other cards. And that's kind of how she was used. If you're winning 2 locations, you just play that arrow on that other location as long as your opponent doesn't have any cards there, or you could fill that location with whatever your opponent throws down. They're not going to win the game. So Aero is a very, very different card. And I guess it was sort of like a leader comparison. All right, and Glenn did answer a bunch of other questions over on Twitter, but I did want to read this one to you. I did find it interesting. The question is, how difficult is it becoming to manage a balance patch versus 90 new cards for the game? Are there different teams for those? And lastly, how long does a new card design spend in a testing cycle before it's considered ready? But Glenn says, I'm sure it varies per person, but I find designing new cards so easy, so balance is harder. So that is one thing. Snap's design manages both teams for balance and new content. And how long a card takes to come to the game varies, but we aim to ensure each card has a roughly 6 weeks to design plus around 2 weeks to fine tune and balance. So that is this update, guys. We got some nerfs, some buffs, some cards hit very hard like Aero, some card not touched at all like Leech and Shuri. Let me know what your favorite part of this update is and what you are not looking forward to the most. There should be some more things coming. Some of the items from the roadmap that we discussed should be coming next week, at least according to some of the messaging that was sent out by the devs. But that is it, guys. If you don't need to subscribe, hit that subscribe button for more great Marvel Snap content. Check me out on social media and check out some of the other videos, guys. I will see you guys next time. Thanks for stopping by. Hulk fist bump, ValleyFlyin out.